Alright, folks. Day 29, December 29th. This is 3 days before the launch of OS Laser Ranked, I suppose. There was another update today. I looked at it. The patch was kind of smaller. You know, fix some crashes here. It was something that was related to something I'm doing. And I don't remember anymore. I'll see if we notice it later on. They didn't address the error message I keep getting on in depth, but I imagine that'll come up a little later. We're gonna use this depth mod again, just because it's a fun novelty for the warm-up. It has something to do with something that's happening automatically. I don't remember. That's okay, it might come to me later. Alright, so yesterday, right? Yeah, yesterday was the depth mod thing. Man, this stuff was... The depth fun mod is pretty dang entertaining. So we're adapting that from yesterday. As far as running up for the warm-up, we kind of slightly scooted up to 165 safely without too much strain, right? It took a little. I think that's what we're gonna do today. Our step downs are pretty fruitful now. I mean, it's very convenient that I started using the alternate conversion a little later, so now we can see them pop up as they're going, right? So these alternate stuff are making their appearance, which is reassuring. I mean, we're gonna try to put more on here before the end. It's a great way to visually just pick out that stuff's kind of checking out or consolidating properly, right? Although as we're hitting the 160s, it's a little bit tough. It's spotty at best. And then it's been quite some time. We've been winding down a little. The 165. Here's one. 167. Then this is the endurance stuff that we're waning out because of fatigue. I have a story today. Let's do a tiny story, not like a really long one. And it's a little bit of a share from me. So I've been doing calisthenics off and on for a while. To give those who are not familiar with the term calisthenics, it's largely, to generalize it, right? The most familiar depiction and imagery of calisthenics would be stuff like push-ups, pull-ups, squats, body weight squats, and like dips, right, on bars. So today, you know, sometimes YouTube algorithm just plops them onto my personal account, and I saw this beginner's survival guide to fitness, right? How to begin. And I was really pleasantly surprised how it reflected the times. I have this particular channel that I follow and watch for quite some time for the technicals, for the mechanical and the scientific, you know, the objective stuff, right? And for the longest time, they built their brand on that stuff, rectifying potential misinformation and bootstrapping through the calisthenic lifestyle. And they built an app and all this incredible tools, objective tools to use. The nature of this video was something that I incredibly resonate with. And that is the idea of, how do you make a guide for someone to start their fitness journey? I can tell you, it's incredibly validating and reassuring that 80 to 90% of that video had quite very little to do with the mechanical, objective aspect of fitness, especially calisthenics, because there are quite a more dynamic component of calisthenics. You have strength, you have endurance, and you have mechanics. The words they probably use is like to get stronger, or to get like more stamina, and skill work would be the thing, like to learn new techniques, right? Because calisthenics it has a component of techniques. So it was, your typical, still set up in 5 steps, so to speak, because it is a traditional catering slightly to the hustle culture kind of stuff. But it was very cogent. It was incredibly concise. Step 1, make goals. And goals were subdivided into short-term goals and long-term goals, suggesting that short-term goals have a refractory, like a reflective feedback forward, and then the long-term goals frame your short-term goals, right? And establishing that becomes like balances main goals and process goals, like stepping stone goals. It didn't go deeper than that. In addition to that step would be something about understanding process focusing. So things that are actively in the process while you're meet your short-term goals and long-term goals. So frame it in a manner that the goals are not the end all. Right? Even short-term goals can become sources of negativity if you don't reach those goals. But those goals are suggestions. They are things you meet as a bottom line. However, it can exceed those short-term goals, and it can also fall below your short-term goals. But the idea is that those goals provide a framework that you can aim, but not unconditionally be the only metric to measure your success. So that's just a little throw-in or something there. However, they're a shorter form format in investigating this, in introducing this stuff. The second one is I think it was, the second point was fun, the balance between fun and discipline. Oh, actually. Yeah, I think they can kind of combine short-term and long-term goal and setting a main goal, but there was a little middle portion about discipline and fun. And that the psychological component here is that, yes, to establish a habit, it requires discipline. However, consistently in trying to reduce the emotional barrier necessary to be disciplined, you can interweave and explore choices. And choices can introduce an element of quote-unquote fun or intellectual stimulation. So that can keep you from being very motivated at first and then just calling it quits after 3 weeks, right? The redundancy and repetition and the emotional stress on the person can be incredible in the beginning. However, that balance between discipline and fun can come with the exploration of choice. Of course, safely integrating choice, right? The next point was a fixed schedule, right? Or actually, the proper workouts. And that's where it was brilliantly segued into their routines that they offer, because they build years and years of exercise routines, the mechanical stuff, the objective stuff, how to find an appropriate routine, right? And then it's about setting schedules, right? Setting schedules is the first hurdle. While depending on how flexible you are in terms of your self-motivations, schedules is a bottom line thing. Like, hey, do this by this time, and then eventually it can be lax. So you don't necessarily, once the habit formation occurs, which is routine, right? That will form the foundation of the routine and then can become lax over time. These are very prominent psychological foundations of establishing a habit. The fourth one, that's when I really enjoy. That's when it started getting a little meta here, right? Ending with a really incredible point. It's either 4th or 5th point, and that is how to form a healthy habit, like tricks in forming the habit, right? And the technique that they used, which is an interesting way to couple the words, but temptation coupling. So often I have shared this a couple times now about how the different approaches and different permutations of this way of forming habit. And when you envision establishing a habit as a negative burden, you can often couple this with an established habit that provides reward or a positive habit. So, for example, doing a workout before you get online and play your favorite video game. I run, wash up, get online, right? I actually couple work with more work. However, the idea is the readout is to couple a reward that you've already established to an established habit with another habit that you're trying to establish, right? And it can work both ways. You have to explore in what order is it enabling. For me, I have successfully done both, I would say. I have examples where I do something to prep myself to do the thing that I'm trying to establish. For example, I play video games to form a mindset to practice communication. I play a video game in order to spark things that irritate me and annoy me in order to understand them. So that's not traditionally something that's often emphasized because that's a lot more difficult to manage a lot of times, because when you do something you like, you don't typically think of building up to do something else. Generally, that type of perspective, if someone's giving that advice already, they are already struggling to build up to anything. So it's often the reverse. However, I'm saying this because even healthy people, like healthy, self-motivated people, can empower themselves to do even more by doing the reverse, which is the whole digression I had a bit back about what is the most opportunistic time to take on new challenges. You take them on when you're in your best mindset. So I don't simply rest on my laurels when I'm down and then I have to establish a new habit. So instead, taking video games and coupling it with a fitness program. So I must do my workouts in order to gain access to my video games. That's temptation coupling, right? Their phrasing that they're using to enable them. You keep that in mind. And then there are other things you can use as well. Internalized benefits, right? So yeah, this habit, it's so hard, but just imagine keep on focusing and exploring all the benefits, all the positivity, not even to counteract the negativity, the emotional barriers and expenditures, right? I think they had a third point in somewhere. But generally speaking, it's about the coupling and associating the dynamics between your established habits and the habit you want to establish. And then all the psychological barriers or the tricks that you can do. And that's incredibly awesome. That's what I mean by there was a discussion maybe 2 days ago about dieting and workout. And I've met someone over these weeks that are doing both simultaneously for over 6 months now. And sure enough, coincidentally, this video highlights a lot of the underlying foundations of establishing habits. If one is able to establish habits, then it doesn't end with fitness. It doesn't end with skill building. It doesn't end with just OS. So that's kind of a really, really fun little thought earlier today. Actually, you know, let's dive a little deeper. I'm feeling pretty good today. Let's make this a little bit longer. So, another thought I had when I was watching this is, man, the times have changed, right? It's very validating when the things you think about, the hyper objectivity of the hustle culture of the internet has really subsided in a way that now that most content creators have established their tools, their brand, like their cumulative experience brand, the trend now has moved to a position where you're trying to retain and encourage and enable people to sustainably view or engage in a product that they have built on, right? And one of them is that this channel that I watch about calisthenics, they have built many years of objectively verifiable routines, biomechanics, what have you. However, with all of that, they still serve objective tools still serve as tools. Without the enabling and the psychology, you know, the psychological foundations of establishing the use, like how to approach it, how to use it, how to sustainably think for yourself and independently take advantage of tools, those tools do not have value until it's used. So it's a great, wonderful, like, example of how you don't necessarily have to be incredibly well educated and perceptive and, I don't know, cosmopolitan in order to pragmatically come to conclusions or pragmatically problem solve into the very consistent things about the human condition. And it's incredible that, I mean, it is also the YouTube algorithm, so it's wonderful to see that some of the channels that I followed and actually used quite often to understand mechanics and, you know, just the objective stuff that is very consistent between all the other channels, how they're beginning to differentiate. I follow the perspective and the impression I'm given by this pair of individuals on this channel because they exude a compassion. It's very impressionably human. So while they're going about their routines about this is the execution, these are the biomechanics, this is the stuff you have to watch for when you're executing a compound movement, the intricacies and nuances between like an archback pull-up and a tucked, or I don't even know what they call the normal one, so the straight body pull-up, right, the standard pull-up, bystander doesn't have a word, doesn't really have a meaning unless you're doing calisthenics. Or, you know, the different variations of push-ups, like archer push-ups and diamond push-ups, etc., right? All those nuances, many years. I take inspiration, I just take here and there. It's like, today I feel like I need this, today I need this, so I do this. However, I am a person that has already overcome how to establish habits for myself, right? And it's great to see that many of those videos that I feel that the content creators, I felt a resonance, impression that the content creators are creating content in a way to share their passion compassionately. And sure enough, over these 5 or so years, whether it was intentional or not, or naturally occurring from trying to like pragmatically boost their influence, right? Whatever the motivations are, and a combination of stuff, it's reassuring and incredibly validating to see the trend take hold in most of the channels that I've seen. I don't know about all the channels that I haven't seen. However, in these, it's a really strong coincidence that across, I would say now, 6 or 7 disciplines, the trend in order to advise people, advise their community, how to utilize their information is paramount. It's come center stage. You can demonstrate, right? Obviously, that's kind of what I do here to some extent, but it's a backseat to what it means or what is its application. So yes, for example, you can watch a 30-minute workout routine. Oh, that was the 4th point, by the way. That was one of the points I missed. Doing a routine that is within your comfort zone. If it's 1 minute of push-ups, start with 1 minute of push-ups. If it's 2, start with 2. If you cannot do something consistently, it's unlikely to form into a habit. So wherever the bar is, they arbitrarily started with 30 minutes, which is kind of the baseline average. Well, if you can walk for 10 minutes a day, start there. You can see yourself doing it for 3 months, 10-minute walks. It can become 11, it'll become 12. The idea is to form a foundation in order to form the habit. Anyways, besides that, that's a slight digression because I just remembered what the points were. Memory work in such a strange way. So nowadays, these content creators have largely expanded to the idea of, hey, you know, if we take into account and integrate the natural foundations of resonating with the audience and not necessarily just looking inward and looking at the objectivity of the craft you have, one can empower and enable and even earn more reputation and legacy. Like, it's a win-win, right? Retention, sustainability. In fact, here's the inception moment, right? When you're producing your craft and you're naturally incurring a habit of trust and respect and projecting compassion, like empathy for your audience, that naturally forms a habit itself, which routinely comes back in boosting your viewership and, you know, all the pragmatic stuff. And it's a feedback loop. So incredibly, in this way, you're investing forward in encouraging your audience and the people you talk to form a habit of using and reviewing and checking out your content from time to time. Like for me, when you see a video, there will be a time, sometime down the road, I will revisit a video. YouTube algorithm kind of actually works that way. It's a 1-year period, by the way, if you're curious. You'll notice that when you see a video, after 1 year, you'll probably see a cycle of that video on your feed at some point. The idea is that the first time you viewed it, it's not going to be the same as the second time you view it. Maybe 1 year later, perhaps 1 month later, 10 days later. You extract information differently if you're looking for information differently. Certainly, it might feel the same if you will it. However, encouraging a habit to actively do that will allow you to continue to extract more information from it. So naturally, when you're thinking about forming habits, and then you break down habits, right? So this video is about establishing a fitness habit. All those tips, all those steps, those are psychological foundations. They're applicable to nearly every type of skill. So if fitness is not a big deal to you, right? Or you have already done this and you're an incredibly healthy person, watching that video deconstructs some things that you may or may not remember or have done for a while and have forgotten the basics, right? But the idea is, when you revisit these things, you create a reminder or encourage a self-awareness that allows you to maybe inspire you to innovate and promote an even better working routine for yourself. So it might not just end with fitness. It could be video games. It could be your career, right? If you deconstruct a video that deals with enabling psychologically your community, if you just remove the context, and you ask yourself, where else can I use this advice? Where else can I apply this? Is it context specific? Well, oftentimes when you think of psychological foundations like habit formation, it's context independent. That might sound a little bit like a hot take, and I have most definitely been challenged vigorously by individuals who would use the phrase, it depends. Well, it depends on a lot of things. It depends on the person. Well, that's when it gets a little hairy and it becomes a hot take, right? When you're thinking about the psychological foundations of habit formation, the stronger your comprehension of yourself when it comes to your habit formation, it doesn't depend. It's context independent. If you come to the realization what habit formation is, generally speaking, you're not thinking about how habit formation is context specific for you or other people. You're thinking about how that skill is universally transferable between things. So, for example, in this way, it's kind of ironic because I had a digression earlier about looking at life and looking for the differences in your routines in order to spark intellectual interest. In this way, it's a great example of if you're constantly looking for differences, you don't see the similarities. So oftentimes the bottom line is the context independent psychological conditioning is you have to develop a self-awareness. At least ask yourself if you're self-aware when you're disproportionately hyper-focused on something. And that underlies a lot of the different steps. Establish a main goal. That's what your focus is on, right? But wait a minute. Also establish short-term goals and long-term goals so that you don't hyper-focus on a singular goal. And on top of that, hey, when you're establishing short-term goals and long-term goals, those are your bottom lines. Don't forget to live in the learning process in between. So it's continuously balancing between having focus and being open, having focus and being dynamic, having focus and being dynamic. So then you go to like think about their routines, like, you know, having discipline over fun. Discipline is focus. Fun is dynamic. Discipline is focus. Fun is dynamic. And then you go to the next step, and it was fixed schedules. Fixed schedules produces a bottom line that creates structure. As that structure becomes more and more static, it becomes less and less intellectually stimulating, and possibly even emotionally draining. We would call, like a lot of people in this context would call it, the grind, right? So yes, the fixed schedule will give you a framework, but it's a framework. Switch it up every once in a while. Change your schedule a little. Loosen up your schedule and become a little more flexible. That introduces dynamics, and that dynamics make it a little bit more interesting. How does this look in a more structured way? Sometimes people up their volumes, tweak their durations, become more efficient, and squeeze things, compress things, and elongate things. Over time, you're always seeking for a more dynamic, going about dynamic problem solving in your routine, even down to the scheduling. So you're balancing between being dynamic and focusing. Habit formation, the whole like temptation coupling, right? Or actually even the duration. The duration is the next point, where like execute a duration that you can do consistently. Absolutely. When you start with that, naturally you're expected to be like, I can do it this long. Maybe I can do it faster in a shorter amount of time. Maybe I can do it longer to get more work done. So the idea is not to strike the balance of where complacency launches you into boredom, and dynamics introduces fun. However, the dynamics cannot exceed the risk factor, right? So when you're thinking about becoming less and less focused, you're thinking about not increasing the risk taking too high to lose focus, and then you refocus, return back and forth. And then the final point is temptation coupling or incentive internalizing, right? Things like reminding yourself, why are you running today? Well, there's a lot of health benefits to it, and I'm just gonna hold on to that and remind myself. Well, guess what? You can be dynamic with that as well. Internalizing benefits isn't the same as internalizing the same benefits. So it's not suggesting like, hey, you know what the benefits of running is. You're actively, constantly looking for new ways to benefit from running. So for example, the first day you run and you're just like running like, I gotta remind myself, running helps the heart. It helps the heart. Well, soon running can become, oh man, you know, it's nice out. Running is a chance to go outside and good for my heart. And so on. Like now running goes out as like, hey, maybe I can go look around the neighborhood while I run and go outside and add to my heart. The sky's the limit. It continues to be dynamic. So even when you're statically thinking about routine, you can continue to build. And that type of mentality is what I would call self-improvement. So when you're self-helping, you're in a rigorous state of establishing a foundation, maintaining those foundations while constantly dynamically adding and improving on those. So you get your baseline, set your goals, short term, etc. Fix your schedules, pick your routine, execute the routine, and establish the routine. Meanwhile, you don't rest on your laurels. You continue to dynamically step up with a foundation. Yes, sure, you have a great foundation and sometimes you stack up and some of the stuff falls over, right? However, you continue to build back up. With a solid foundation, which is what the video is trying to help establish, you can continue to dynamically improve. Like habit, the temptation coupling. Well, let's think meta to this. Well, I used to stream, play video games, and that's it, right? Let's just say you start there. I basically described like 90% of Twitch content creators at this point. You start off, you fell in love with the game, you want to stream, that's your baseline. Then you start maybe setting a schedule for yourself, right? Then you meet those schedules and become habit forming. And that's where it ends a lot of times, until luck slaps you in the face and then something happens, right? So your routine and your trickle effect, it just stops dead in the water, and then you're hoping that your legacy, your endurance, will have luck slap you in the face somehow. Well, there is some merit, absolutely, that when you routinely do something, your intuition can take over and steadily progress. But why stop there? Why stop with intuition when you can further stack luck on your side? You can further increase probability. So, for example, how am I different from 2022 me? Well, I do digressions. I start with opening remarks. I close with review remarks. I do a lot more routines. I run every day before my stream. There are many things that are no longer the same. And it's generally, I can name all the things that stay the same, which a lot of people can probably see. However, there's 2022 me is like a fraction of 2023 me. So ask yourself next time when you're feeling like you're grinding. Grinding is a state that you're spinning the wheel and you're hoping luck not slaps you in the face. While you wait for that, which someday I wait for that too. Luck slapped me in the face a couple times already in my life, and not in the way that most people think. It didn't slap me in the way of reputation. It slapped me in the way of healthy living, habit formation, psychology, and how to self-help myself. That's, how to exercise self-help. Fundamentally, not mechanically. Because when you think of self-help, a lot of times people are thinking of mechanics, as in, hey, let's go and check out this source, and there will be 10 really incredibly context-heavy examples, and oftentimes a person doesn't have the critical thinking enough to dynamically adapt that contextually to themselves, right? Since most of the content they have when it comes to habit formation, be it exercise or dieting, it comes with context specificity. So when someone tells me after listening to my digression about trying to insist that things don't have to be context specific, human condition things are not context specific. They are human conditions. It's an oxymoron. Non-context, like context-specific human condition is an oxymoron. It's something that's ever present. So, to some extent, it is always relevant. The skills you build for human condition. For example, complacency when things are routine. That is context independent. A lot of people would argue, say like, oh, I play video games. I played this like 400 straight. And then some video games I play, I can only play them for 10 days because it feels the same all of a sudden. It's like, well, just so you know, it's not context specific. The video game itself is not inherently capturing your attention, in my opinion. That game that you play 400 times a day is not the same all 400 times. It has been dynamic enough that you extract it emotionally to continue playing. The game itself might not have inherently changed at all. It's your perception of the game that has changed. And the other game is just disinterested. You're disinterested in that. That has no context specificity. The context that person is insisting is it has something to do with the nature of the game. And I would like to agree to some extent. However, it's not the game that's literally changing. It's you. You are literally changing. And that has always remained true, in my opinion. It's context independent because you carry all the cards, in my opinion, right? Like, some people can choose to believe that they're born for whatever reason to dislike something they can't possibly conceive when they were born. I mean, maybe the world and the universe work in mysterious ways that I don't understand. That's fair enough. There are things beyond my comprehension. Absolutely. When it comes to the human condition, if someone tells me that their interest is context specific, then I understand where their experiences are coming from. They are coming from a person who believes that their interest has to be context specific. And that's very understandable, considering life experiences and whatnot are already pre-selected for you, and you have pre-selected those life experiences. So I'm basically talking to a person that get to choose what they like and what they dislike. Well, from my perspective, when I think of psychological tricks or psychological understanding of oneself, the closer I get to context independent, the closer that psychological thing is more important to me. So one thing that's often independent, in my opinion, is habit formation. If you believe that there are things you can't establish habits to, that's kind of hard for me to accept. Some people often say that I can only establish habits to things I like, right? And that's why those things couple hand in hand a lot of times. Like, oh yeah, it's context specific. I can't form habits on things I dislike. Just let that sink in for a moment, right? So, if that is real, if that is true, let's just accept the premise that there are things you dislike and you can't form habits with things you dislike. Just accepting that axiom, right? So, what happens when the thing you dislike is the thing that can save your life? Well, clearly then that's a counter argument for not being able to establish a habit that you dislike, right? I can understand how it feels like you probably can't do it. And that's kind of what I mean by context independent. If you can't envision doing something, does it mean it's impossible? I'm not even talking about if it is literally impossible. I'm talking about if it's figuratively feels like it's incompatible, then you're thinking of a context-specific situation. So, maybe I'm completely wrong, you know, Like, I don't want to be wrong here, actually. If someone proves me wrong, then I feel like there's something that will stop people from wanting to better their lives even when they when they dislike it. And the stuff that I typically focus on are deficiencies. So I'm naturally attracted to, in my opinion, I'm naturally attracted to problems because I like to solve problems. And typically they're from the perspective of deficiencies. So when it comes to habit formation, tying it back to the inspiration of this digression, when you believe that a habit is context specific, and that context is requiring a self-selection for how much you emotionally like something or dislike something, I like to challenge the person to ask themselves, how much do you know about things you like or dislike? How much do you literally know? Because in order to have any of that being true, you would need to know a lot about the context before you make a decision, right? Well, how pragmatic is that? Because if I told you that you need to work out to take better care of your physical being, and you dislike that, how do you know you dislike that? The more context specific something becomes, especially something that is basic human condition, the more you're probably incompetent about it. You start focusing on things you can't possibly know because you've already pre-selected them out. So a lot of times when I'm in these situations, when I talk to people about their context specific conditions, it just piles up. It continues to pile up. The conditions for anything just keep stacking on each other. In fact, when they start learning more and YouTube providing more and more objective information, like, oh hey, don't forget that to start doing a squat, you need to remember these 80 things, because these 80 things come from 20 different influencers. All 20 of them you try to systematically comb through to figure out what are the essentials to a squat, and you have already become overwhelmed. You and those people require increasingly more and more contextual information to do things. I would say eventually, even for myself, there's a time to stop thinking and start doing. And you can well practice this exercise by embracing the idea that your goal, or one of your goals, is try to practice lifting some of those conditions. When you lift those conditions, a lot more things become less and less context specific. Like incentivizing yourself to go on a diet. It becomes less context specific. It becomes less conditional. Like, man, I really don't want to do this and this, but this type of diet seems like, do it. When it becomes less context specific, you become more experimental. You do it and see what happens. You do it and you're actively finding out if it's working in the moment. Not constantly relying on your potential competence and your inexperience. That digression kind of went really far and I didn't wrap it back. However, let's kind of step back a little bit more, or like return it back. So a lot of times I do get a lot of conflicts. The counter argument of it depends, right? Well, it depends if this is related to something I like, right? All those things. I understand that can be very sustainable, by the way. However, if you're someone who's already spiraling and you're already having problems, establishing new habits, and you're already having problems trying to come up with a sustainable habit and invoking change to your life for the better, I would say a red flag, a cumulative red flag to look out for is ask yourself how many times you're telling yourself it depends, or asking yourself, I need more information. I need to know what the risk and the rewards are. I need to know what will happen. Literally will happen. How strong that force is how conditional you're going to become whenever you try to introduce change into your life. And having a balance is often self-correcting. So the more context you have, the less things you do, it inherently reduces the chance of being able for you to change against your own self-awareness of what you need to do. So the reason why this is important, and it sounds a little bit one-sided, is generally, again, I am very attracted to problems, and because I like problem solving, and generally speaking, I'm hyper-focused on it, right? And I have my own routines to balance that out so that my world doesn't feel like I'm always surrounded by problems. So the stuff that I'm saying is I practice as well. Just ask yourself that if you're incredibly healthy, by all means, incredibly healthy, sustainable, able to establish habits while juggling all of these things, fair enough. And that's kind of where I want to end, I guess, this digression for today for the opening remarks. This is a habit, right? I'm only establishing this habit that I'm doing right now on OS for 1 month. I might keep it, I might not keep it. The idea is that I'm going through the routine of being able to, how do I do this for 31 days straight? How do I not, right? And it doesn't necessarily have to lead to a main goal or a bigger goal. I can do this at any time. And this is an exercise in doing that. Perhaps I would challenge anyone to exercise having even the monochrome, a monochrome. I don't think that's the word I'm looking for. An ounce of ability to invest in anything temporarily and just demonstrating to yourself that you can do it. And then you can choose to stop whenever. You can choose start or stop whenever. So if you don't have the attention span, if you're going around saying like everyone has the attention span of like a chicken, ask yourself what your attention span is like. There's some interesting things to think about when you're being conditioned all the time by internet hustle culture. Ask yourself how much time you spend on the internet and what you're actually being exposed to. For me, take it back to the beginning of this digression, right? The inspiration for this. Those individuals have put the psychological well-being of their community, enabling them in a short, concise video, unlike my digressions, in a way that it enables their viewers and community to use the tools they've established that are more or less objective as possible with the current amount of research available. And it's brilliant. So, that's the story for today. I actually really do enjoy getting into the mindset of these stories and digressions before doing a practice. Just so just as a personal share. When I get up in the morning and I like warm up, like I just literally warm up with some heating on my legs and whatnot and get ready for my run, I actually take a thought with me to my run now. It's no longer about running and seeing how long I run or how fast I run or what the time is or worrying about certain things because I established those habits. Now I routinely spend 10 minutes while my body's warming up, literally. I spend 10 minutes, grab onto an idea, take that idea to my run, and it gives me 30 minutes to think about how to develop this idea. I wash up and I come here and I execute by talking about and developing that idea. It's not the greatest idea, like what I mean is it's not well written, it's not well rehearsed yet. I'm building a foundation through iteration. So this idea was literally this morning, about, well, including this hour and like an hour before and my 30-minute run, so about 3 hours ago. This is what I came up with right there, and I continue that routine. That's a new routine. My running is when I brainstorm for my opening remarks for when I practice this OS thing, which won't be here for after 3 days. I will be taking a break from this, and I might start the next routine. Just to give an exact idea. Obviously, I can't record all these things. It would be kind of fun to see if I could actually record myself running and having those thoughts at the same time. And there's just so many things. You can just continue to build on it or not build on it. Sometimes, you know, certain things don't work. And I can tell you, there are things that I've done. For everything that does work for me, I would say actually more things don't work. So whenever you're thinking about the hustle culture of the internet, right? It's, to me, is almost literally and figuratively the opposite. If you're a person that's caught up in the hustle culture of the internet, you are always thinking in the mindset that you're looking for the best move, the best next move. What is the best way to approach this so I make the least amount of mistakes or try the least amount of things because it's time efficient. The most time efficient things make you, in my opinion, statistically more likely an incredibly fragile person. It robs you of problem solving and critical thinking practices. You might not need it. Luck is on a lot of people's sides, and there are a lot of people out there that are giving you life hacks. Perhaps you get lucky. Absolutely. I'm just saying that you could also live a life that you don't rely on luck. And luck will still find you then. Luck is always there. I'm just saying. Like, whatever you do, however you do it, luck is still there. So why not spend your other times stacking the deck? That's my remark for the day. I'm getting all like kind of sappy and emotional because it's the end of the year. 2023 was a pretty big year. You know, I've met people with short attention spans, met people with long attention spans, fundamentally disagree with me. Like, there was a lot in 2023. And 2024 is going to be another big year. Every year is going to get bigger and bigger. I don't ever intend to do less than my yester self. So we'll see.